Alright guys, if you didn't get a chance to watch either one of my stimulus updates from earlier today, then I will link to both those videos down in the description box below. I highly recommend you go and watch those. But I wanted to fill you in on some stuff that is currently going on that is going to play a major impact, a major role in the outcome of stimulus negotiations moving forward after the election. So I want to break that down, explain what that is, and how one of these could be Nancy Pelosi's biggest mistake she's ever made in her entire life. Currently, the American people are waiting for stimulus checks, federal unemployment benefits, PPP funding, rental and housing assistance, school funding, food assistance, child care funding, and so much more. However, all of that is being held up due to the fact that Steve Mnuchin and Nancy Pelosi can't come to an agreement on the verbiage for testing and contact tracing, and they can't come to an agreement on the overall budget for state and local government funding. Those are the two key issues right now. Also, dozens of high-level economists are currently predicting that without stimulus soon, that there is going to be a real threat of a double-dip recession. Larry Kudlow keeps on saying we have this super V-shaped recovery and everything is going really well. However, there are other reports that are indicating a K-shaped recovery, which means you got two different recoveries. You got one that goes down and up, and this is for rich people. It goes down and up. The other one is the other part of the K, which is the bottom, which means things are getting better, and then all of a sudden they drop off and get worse. That is the K, and that is for people that are not so well off, are not the super wealthy, right? Those are those people. Now, the last time we saw a double dip recession was back in the early 1980s, and the economy shrank in the early 1980s, which shrank by 8% from year over year. And just to give you an idea of where we are currently at, the last estimate was roughly 30%. And this is going off the GDP. Okay? So this is a scary figure. This is a scary figure, and Congress needs to look at these numbers, needs to really see what is going on, because we're not having a super V-shaped recovery. There are many people that are still struggling. There are people that you will never see, never have even heard of, that are struggling more than others. People are going homeless. People are being left out in the cold. Kids and families are going hungry. Women, blacks, and Hispanics are struggling to get their jobs back. This is ridiculous. We're supposed to be the best country in the entire world, and we can't even get the people back to work. We can't get a vaccine. We can't get stimulus from the richest country in the entire world. That just doesn't make sense. It's ridiculous. Mark Zandi, a chief economist at Moody's Analytics, said, and Moody's is very well known, very trusted. I personally trust him a lot. So Mark Zandi, a chief economist at Moody's Analytics, said, a double dip recession is a significant threat. We know that. But he also went on to state, the recovery is at significant risk because of the failure of the administration and Congress to pass another fiscal rescue package, particularly given that the pandemic is intensifying and the rancor over the election threatens to boil over. First off, I had to look up rancor, wasn't exactly sure what that meant. It simply means the bitterness or restfulness over a prolonged period of time. So, let's just break down what he said. The recovery is at a significant risk because of the failure of the administration and Congress. He is not putting all the pressure, all the blame on President Trump. President Trump is in office. He is the commander-in-chief. He is the leader. So obviously he has some of the blame. But he can't do everything. So he's putting the rest of the blame on Congress, which is exactly where it needs to be. President Trump and Congress. Not one or the other. It's not just Nancy Pelosi. It's not Steve Mnuchin. It's not Mitch McConnell. It's President Trump and Congress as a whole. He also goes on to state that, particularly given the pandemic is intensifying, this is big. This is huge. Over the past few days, I have brought you multiple reports. Just over the past, let's say 4 days, I believe, we have been seeing record numbers of cases. We've also been seeing the deaths increase, but that is because we're seeing more COVID cases, more positive cases. We're also seeing more hospitalizations. So as of right now, we need to really figure out how we're going to move forward. And based on everything that I'm reading, there is a high likelihood we see modified shutdowns. I don't want to see that. That's going to hurt the economy even more. But if that's what it takes, I personally would be fine. However, I do not live paycheck to paycheck. I do not go out there into the real world. A lot of times I never leave my house. You see a lot of my videos, especially in the morning, where I'm doing a video right out of my home office. Well, guess what? When I'm not in my home office and I'm here, well, there's nobody here. It's just me. So I'm fine. If I want an assistant to come in and do some of my work, I can, and I can leave. I don't need to be in the same office building as my employee. That's fine. I have that luxury, but most people don't. Now, I want to explain, because a lot of people are asking, well, I think Nancy Pelosi was smart to not accept the $1.9 trillion stimulus package because they weren't accepting or weren't providing the right verbiage. And in addition, they weren't accepting the $417 billion for state and local governments. Well, that is one person's point of view, but another person's point of view, and this is more of a common consensus, is that Nancy Pelosi might have just made the biggest mistake of her entire life. Democratic Representative Max Rose from New York stated today that Nancy Pelosi was making a mistake by walking away from roughly $1.9 trillion in stimulus for the American people. With just $300 billion separating the two parties, it just didn't make sense. There should have been somebody putting more pressure on the two negotiators and President Trump himself to get a deal done before the election in just 7 days. We only have 7 days, like 4 working days before the election. And we need to get something done. Now, here's the big issue that many Democrats were urging Nancy Pelosi to consider before trying to get the perfect deal done. Even Wolf Blitzer told Nancy Pelosi, don't let the perfect get in the way of a deal. Okay? That we could still accept a deal. It wouldn't be perfect, but it would still be a deal. So, what these Democrats were urging Nancy Pelosi were saying was, what if Republicans remain in control of the Senate after the election? Well, this would be Nancy Pelosi's biggest and worst nightmare. She does not want this. She could deal with President Trump remaining in office as long as Democrats won over the Senate. But she could not be able to really get anything done if the Senate was still being controlled and majority run by Republicans and Joe Biden was in office. Because anything that has to get passed, any bill that needs to get passed, goes through the House and goes through the Senate before it gets sent off to the president for his or her signature. I'm just going to say his signature because right now it's both male, right? Joe Biden, President Trump. So that is how it would work. Well, here's the issue. President Trump is currently the leader of the Republican Party because he is the president. But what happens if Joe Biden were to win and the Senate is still majority run by Republicans? That means Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell would be the leader of the Republican Party, which would mean that anything that needs to be worked out, any stimulus negotiations, would have to be between Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell. Nancy Pelosi does not like Mitch McConnell. Nancy Pelosi cannot stand Mitch McConnell, especially now after the Amy Coney Barrett nomination. So, right now, they are not friends. They do not like each other. My guess is Nancy Pelosi does not even respect Mitch McConnell. So, it is a mistake that Nancy Pelosi pretty much just walks away from stimulus negotiations. She still says they are talking. They will continue to work. They will continue to fight for the American people. But in all honesty, I don't see that happening. if she was continuing to fight, we would hear more updates. We'd have more and better information than we have right now. Mitch McConnell and the majority of Senate Republicans don't support a stimulus package that exceeds $1 trillion. And the majority of them only support stimulus that is targeted stimulus in the range of roughly $500 to $600 billion. So, if the balance of power does not transfer and shift over to Democrats after the election, then any substantial amounts of stimulus will be out of the question. And this is one of the reasons why multiple Democrats have publicly come forward and pressured Nancy Pelosi into accepting a stimulus deal, because they never know what will happen after the election. Also, Nancy Pelosi has stated several times over the past couple of weeks that she is not optimistic that even a stimulus deal, if a stimulus deal was agreed upon between the Trump administration and Nancy Pelosi and Democrats, that Mitch McConnell would even bring it to the Senate floor. So, just in my opinion, if this was a worry of mine, I would not want to put it out there. I would not want to prolong this. I would not want to run the risk of the fact that I might have to negotiate directly with Mitch McConnell if everything goes as somewhat planned. Joe Biden wins the presidency and the Senate is still controlled by Republicans. Nancy Pelosi seems very focused, in my point of view, on her stimulus package. That she is not seeing the big and many red flags that are coming up. Currently, multiple media outlets show through their polls that Republicans are currently holding a lead in the Senate. This simply means that Nancy Pelosi could have made a huge mistake. I'm not saying she did make a mistake. We will not know for about 7 to 8 days, so we will see after that point. However, right now what I know is that I would have rather taken a guarantee $1.9 trillion than run the risk of getting just $500 billion, because now I have to work directly with Mitch McConnell, or if Joe Biden wins and the Democrats take over the Senate and the House and there's a sweep, then we could potentially see like $2.5 trillion. So really, the risk versus reward just doesn't make sense. As a business owner, okay, as somebody that I do gamble every once in a while, as somebody that does gamble, I love to place bets and things like that. You need to understand the risk versus reward. Right now, Nancy Pelosi is risking about $1.4 trillion. And she's the only reward, the only upside is about $600 billion. So right now, it just doesn't make sense to me. I personally would have taken a guaranteed $1.9 trillion. I would have, gave concessions for Republicans, and I would have taken that deal. That would have been me personally. But I'm not Nancy Pelosi. I never will be. And we will see what happens very soon. Right now, many people are worried about what will happen, what will potentially happen to the average American family. This would also be a family that lives paycheck to paycheck and has very little set aside for emergency funds. This is also a family that normally has 2 working parents and kids that are in school every single day. This would also be a family that relies on schools to provide care for their children while the parents are at work. Many people are wondering what is going to happen to the average American family. Right now, the average American family is going to see loss after loss after loss. That's what's currently being predicted. This group of people is going to be hit hard very soon, and it's going to happen all at once. The eviction moratorium is going to expire. That is going to hurt. Companies are going to expand their permanent layoffs. That again is going to hurt not only the families, but the economy as a whole. Credit card debt is starting to skyrocket, which is providing no usable credit to borrowers to go and pay for bills, food, and other necessities. And as COVID cases increase, potentially causing another wave of modified shutdowns. Again, I've said this multiple times. We are pretty much following the same trend, the same path as Europe. If that's the case, we're about 2 to 3 weeks behind Europe. As of right now, Europe is starting to do modified shutdowns. So if we continue on the same path, we won't be too far off of having modified shutdowns ourselves either. What I can tell you right now is stimulus is more important now than back in April. Americans should have been giving a monthly stimulus check to help them get through the pandemic and survive. However, that has not happened, and here we are. But this is your second stimulus check update for late Tuesday, October 27th. We're about 7 days away from the election, from knowing who's going to win the Senate. Is the House going to remain in control or be controlled by Democrats, which most people anticipate it will be, and who's going to win the upcoming presidential election. These are all big things, and this is all going to happen on one day. So in 7 days, hopefully, we have our answers. But as I know more regarding stimulus, I promise I will continue to share more. Just want to thank you guys for watching. Do me a favor, smash that thumbs up button if you enjoy the fact that I do hours and hours of work and research on my time so that you don't have to. But thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.